This Tuesday morning with the whole crew in studio. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling, shifting gears from Titans to Vols for a few minutes this morning with our good friend Austin Price of VolQuest's on 3, who joins us as the glass breaks Tuesdays at 8:20. Austin, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you all doing?
Good. Oh, we are good. Been a lot of Mason Rudolph versus Will Levis this morning. Austin, you know as well as anybody that nothing gets the people fired up like the backup quarterback coming in and winning a football game.
Well, guys, the answer is simple. It should be Mason Rudolph.
That's what Ramon said.
Look at that.
No, he's a Steeler homer. You can't say that. You're still a homer when you say that, Austin.
At the end of I'm not a homer. I'm not a Titan. I'm not a Titans guy. See, I can be answer. You know, I'm not. I don't even know if I have an NFL team. But you know, like what I do know is Will Levis, in my opinion. Not that my opinion matters at all on this subject, because it does not. But he's a lot like Brian Maurer. He came in like Brian Maurer did against Georgia that year, hit the deep ball to Marquez Callaway, and everybody went, ooh. Like he came in last year, hit those 2 deep balls to DeAndre Hopkins, and everybody went, ooh. And then since then, what's he done? So it's kind of where I'm at with it.
I'm not going to argue with you. It's
Austin, you listen, I'm a Steelers homer is what I got told, even though I've worked sidelines for the team, okay? Like, you can't come on here with me on this show saying those types of things, okay? Because they're going to think I text you and paid you. Did I send you a Cash App, Apple Pay, or Zelle?
Steelers.
No, you did not. No, you did not.
I love it. Well, Austin,
I appreciate you.
There is a top 5 team in Knoxville getting ready to head into Arkansas this weekend. As you look at this matchup between the Vols and Razorbacks, how big of a challenge do you see Arkansas giving Tennessee? What is their pathway to upsetting the Vols on Saturday night?
I think, it's similar to what, Oklahoma's was, which is, get off to a good start, use the crowd to your advantage, and try to just kind of hang in there as long as you can. I mean, this, for Arkansas to win the game again, it's got to be, I think, relatively close going to the fourth quarter. I think that, goes with getting off to a good start. Tennessee's going to move the ball. They're going to score points. The question is, can Arkansas match it offensively? Arkansas has had, some really nice moments this year. But they're also, susceptible to kind of lulls like they did in the second half against Oklahoma State, even like they did Saturday against, Texas A&M, where, Green does not, look very stable back there when they keep him in the pocket. He is much more efficient when he's out there creating, on the move, those type things. So I think this still comes back down to Tennessee's defensive line. If they come in there and they're wrecking stuff, then I think it's hard for Arkansas to win. But again, Arkansas's got to hang in there, keep it close, and then try to, make this thing a 4-quarter fight.
Austin, in the bye week, obviously, Tennessee able to rest some guys who are banged up. Let's start with Lance Hurd at left tackle. How much optimism is there that he will be able to start on Saturday?
I mean, I do think that there is some optimism there. And, again, I think ultimately, Lance Hurd, it all boils down to, what can he do in terms of, with the ankle? He's had 2 more weeks on it. I can't imagine that this thing is still lingering. But again, I think with today's players, you just never know. So it's easier just to kind of play down the middle of the road until they start releasing these injury reports. But if you ask me, I think he'll be on there. I do. Do I think he'll be probable? I do. I don't think he'll be questionable. If he's questionable on Wednesday, I will be stunned. But again, I would have been stunned 2 weeks ago. But again, we're 2 weeks later. If he's been in the training room, one would imagine that, the ankle should be pretty close.
Austin Price of VolQuest's on 3 with us this morning. Austin, I was a fan early of the season of Taylen Green, man, and his ability to make plays, and of course, their staff that they have there with how they're able to score points. What biggest issue do they have in containing Taylen Green? Because what I saw this past weekend was he loves rolling out to the right side of his offense, man. What is Coach Banks and his crew going to do to somewhat stop and limit him on making plays down the field like that?
Put James Pierce over on that side.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, Again, he's way more comfortable when he's outside the pocket. He throws better on the run. And some guys are like that. They're just not as comfortable on platform. And, I think if you're Tennessee, you want to force them to be on platform. And you want to try to, collapse the pocket. I think this game suits up really well for Arion Carter because I think his speed as a spy for Green will really help Tennessee here. So I think this is a game where Arion Carter has a chance to really showcase. And, again, I think it's just about, keeping him in front of you. Don't let him create. And I think if you can do that, then your chances to have more success on defense go dramatically up.
When you look at this team coming off the bye, and Will and I had a little BVS conversation coming out of the break about, hey, there's always this one game where Hype got to make sure his team stays focused, right? On the road, especially in Arkansas. Arkansas can be really toxic. Any SEC school can. What has been Heupel's message as far as staying in game mode in this bye week and coming out of where we've seen other coaches like Coach Saban say rat poison, or we get an audio somehow of Kirby again cussing and fussing and making his team believe they are the worst team in all of college sports. What has Heupel's growth been as a head coach in that side of his coaching?
Well, I think he's done a nice job of keeping them locked in. And if he, I think he does, but if he doesn't, then I think some of his position coaches, like a Rodney Garner, do a nice job of keeping the kids grounded. They don't let them ever feel too good about themselves. I think after the Oklahoma game, where everybody just raved and told Tennessee how great they were, I think Rodney Garner went in with like a long list of plays of, hey, this was terrible, this was terrible, this was terrible, you're awful here. And it's just like, you're not going to believe these press clippings. And so I do think that that's something where, this team as a mature team, especially at the line of scrimmage, they benefit from the fact that, they are a little bit older. I don't think that they'll get too caught up in all of the love they've been getting. And they know if you can win Saturday, it's your last road game until mid-November. So you come home for a 4-game homestand with a second bye week sandwiched in between. That's where you start to cook with grease. And that's where you start to really kind of say, okay, college football playoff. Everybody's talking about it, but it becomes way more real if you return home as a 5-0 football team.
Austin Price joining us this morning of VolQuest's like he does every Tuesday morning at this time. So, Austin, when it comes to maybe taking the foot off the gas pedal just a little bit in the second half, it proved to be probably the right decision. You saw what happened last weekend with Auburn when they decided to go full force. But in saying that, how much more are we going to see with the passing game this weekend? And in particular, how much more can we see out of slot receiver Squirrel White?
I think a lot of it depends on, who's healthy, Kayla, at offensive tackle. If they have their full complement of offensive tackles, then I think you see a lot more 3 wide receiver sets. Now, if they've got to play a bunch of 12 personnel, which means 2 tight ends, then it probably gets a little more interesting with Squirrel's playing time because ultimately he's going to be the one that comes off the field as the slot in 2 tight end sets, which means that Brazel, Dante Thornton, Brew all benefit as they will not come off the field in those instances. So I think for Squirrel, I think it boils down to, being able to protect number 8. If the tackles are back and Tennessee feels good about their ability to protect Nico, then I think you'll see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets for Squirrel White to be on the field.
What is some of the stuff you feel like this Vols team was able to work on during the bye week coming off of that win at Oklahoma?
I think for them, it's getting some of those younger players, more acclimated to things. I think it's continuing to push a guy like Mike Matthews. I think it's working Jesse Perry and Bennett Warren and some of those younger tackles because, as we saw at Oklahoma, you never know when you may need to turn to them. I mean, had Tennessee had a helmet knocked off of Dane Davis or Larry Johnson, maybe John Campbell's able to get back in the football game, but you might have had to turn to a Jesse Perry, or if somebody had turned their ankle, you may have had to turn to a Jesse Perry. So I think the more you can get those guys acclimated, for the stretch run, so to speak, I think the better it is for Tennessee's offensive line situation.
VolQuest's Austin Price, our guest on Twitter at Austin Priceless. Austin, on the recruiting front, Jaedon Harmon still continuing to hear from Alabama on campus for their win over Georgia. What's the latest with his recruitment, and how much is Tennessee still pushing to stay in the driver's seat at this point?
Well, Tennessee's pushing hard, and they've had good dialogue with him through the weekend, after the weekend, and then he'll be up here next week for the Florida game, and then subsequently for his official visit for the Alabama game. So 2 weeks in a row, he'll be back up to Knoxville. And but I mean, listen, Tennessee is recruiting the right kind of players, and other schools are worried about Tennessee when Auburn's going after Travis Smith, when you have other players like Douglas Utu, who flipped to Oregon, getting poached away, when Jaedon Harmon is hearing routinely from Alabama still, when Shady Hayward is hearing from Georgia still, and so on and so forth. Like, you're recruiting the right kind of players. Too many years, nobody really tried to recruit Tennessee's players away. I think it says a lot about, what Josh Heupel and them have done, the kind of class they've built this year, and the momentum they have as a program, when other schools are like, we can't really let that kid go to Tennessee. We need to try to get him away from Tennessee. So you're recruiting the right kind of kids if they're doing every bit of this, and it's happening a lot more frequently now than it has in a long time.
Austin, is there another name Tennessee pivots to now with Douglas Utu flipping to Oregon? How do they feel about this offensive line class? I
mean, they like it a lot. They love Anthony Ogamoro, they love Nick Moore, and obviously they love David Sanders. They hated to lose Douglas Utu. They sure didn't want to, but it kind of was what it was. And I would say they would lean more towards the portal at this point. But, hey, if the right guy called them, and that has happened, where kids reach out, or the right kid was willing to listen if Tennessee called them, then, Tennessee could look at the high school ranks. But I still think right now, as we said here, first day of October, I would lean towards them, taking that spot and going to the portal for it.
Also, when you look at the rest of the schedule, how it's shaping up, man, what is even a day game? Right now, you've had Oklahoma, you got Arkansas, you got Florida. Bama might be a 3:30. But what does it say about the Vols brand, man, being able to put it on Front Street as far as being at the primetime slots?
Yeah, I mean, if Tennessee wins Saturday, we're going to know the Alabama game time. And, I mean, after Alabama beat Georgia and they're number one in the country in the AP, I know everybody pegged Texas, Georgia for the night game, and it still might be just because Texas' home schedule is not very good, and, it's their realistic opportunity to get them for a night game. But Tennessee becomes way more attractive for that Alabama night game than they were before Alabama beat Georgia. And so you're right. If that game doesn't end up a night game, then it's UTEP. Because, I mean, that Mississippi State and Kentucky are late. So, I mean, it's welcome to the ABC contract, where if you win, the more you win, the more night games you get. So, Tennessee fans clamored for night games forever, and now Tennessee's getting a ton of them. And again, if you're in the media like I am, you either want it to be early or you want it to be late. That way you get your day. There's nothing worse than the middle of the afternoon slot for me.
Also, my best tweet personally, I'm just saying it, is I love the fact that I got to dig at Georgia this weekend on the basis that they finally had to go to Tuscaloosa. I'm tired of the Vols having to constantly go to these line dens and have to fight out of it. And I'm glad Georgia's fan base got an opportunity to see that playing the Big Three like we did every year, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, on the road or at home, does have an advantage. So whereas Georgia somewhat gets that in the SEC championship, and nobody wants to acknowledge that. Like, watching the way they just got blitzed early, Austin, was just a reality check for what the new SEC is going to be. And I'm appreciative of that as a player coming out of the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee and Auburn, the two schools that have had to routinely play the two best teams in the conference, and they don't even count Tennessee's house of horrors that is playing Florida. So, it's not been a lot of fun to be Tennessee's football coach or to be a Tennessee fan the last, really the last decade. I mean, Alabama got really good, but Georgia got really good in the last decade. So, it has been hard. It still is hard. So yeah, I mean, I think the more if you're Georgia, you obviously you play Tennessee, but you also have to play at Texas. You have to go to Alabama. You look at Oklahoma's schedule, and it's just a murderer's row. So, Tennessee's schedule, I wouldn't say it's the hardest of the conference, but you still have Alabama and Georgia on there, which means,
Right.
It's an opportunity. Again, it's all how you look at it. Now that Tennessee's gotten better, Ramon, these are opportunity games. Whereas before, it's like just hold on, stay healthy, and we'll get ready for whoever we play the next week. Now it's like opportunity. Go win those games. Yeah. Go beat Alabama at home like you did 2 years ago. When you did that, what happened? Tennessee ascended to number 1 in the country. Go try to do what you've not done in Athens since 2016 and go win down there. Those are opportunity games with a football team like Tennessee has currently.
Austin Price of VolQuest joins us Tuesdays at 8:20 here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. A great time to subscribe to VolQuest if you haven't already, with a top 5 team in Knoxville and a lot of big games coming up. Austin, excellent as always, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. See you next week.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
Austin.
There's Austin Price talking a little bit of Vols with us this morning. Coming up, I've got a stat for you from Next Gen Stats about a player we have not yet discussed this morning, and Titans fans are going to love it. That's next.